Let me tell you guys about BellyUpSports. BellyUpSports is the internet sports bar. Go ahead and check out their website, www.bellyupsports.com, to read some great articles from great writers all across the country, from hockey, baseball, golf, soccer, you name it. BellyUpSports is the premier, not your average website. It's been discussed plenty of times at this point. It's like a broken record when it comes to Barcelona, at least in recent years. It's been their financial struggles. Um, if you had to pinpoint where all this came from, what would you say was kind of the start of where Barcelona is now financially?
I would say it started in 2017, where we had probably the worst president in the club's history, who could not run a bank book, let alone a football club. It started off with him giving way too much money to players who didn't deserve it. Quadrupling the wages of, for example, Umtiti after having a good 3 months, giving, Barcelona legends like PK, Jordi Alba, Busquets, Neymar, Messi, Suarez, outrageous salaries, which at the time, I mean, the club could afford it, but like it just wasn't feasible or viable. Then you're doing all this on top of having the pandemic, which our club was not prepared for whatsoever. And it hit home pretty hard. You have, of course, no income. And I think at that time, the rule of thumb at Barcelona is to have 70% of your income go towards the first team players' wages. I think when the pandemic started, 95% of the club's income was going to the first team wages, which shows how off the mark he really was. And yeah, ever since then, we've been trying to survive. Of course, during his time, the former president, I don't like mentioning his name, before he left, he renewed a bunch of players' contract with also in fluctuating wages that were supposed to increase over time, which helped the club temporarily in the 6 months that he did it, but later on would suffer. Then we have, of course, had a new president coming in during the first season after COVID. When he came in, he was lied to a lot about how the state of the club was financially. So in order to have the full answers, he had to do a whole entire audit of the actual club, which took about 3 months, which is one of the reasons why we lost Leo Messi, was because not only could we not afford him, not only did La Liga did not approve of the contract, but also the fact that La Liga were trying to push us to sign this deal called the CVC deal, which was to forgive, for cup, should I say, 30% of our TV right income for the next 30 years. Now, for a club like Barcelona and Real Madrid, the majority of our money is generated through TV rights. So where the games are broadcast, the rest of it's going to be sponsorships, advertisements, all that sort of stuff. So when Joan Laporte, the new president, refused to sign that deal, that of course entailed lost us Leo Messi. But since then, it's kind of been on the road to recovery. So we've made signings. We've sold some of our because we were down so bad to the point where you had to sell future assets to generate income immediately. So that's what we did with all those palancas, the economic levers, in the summer of 2022. We went out and spent half the money on the likes of Lewandowski, Jules Koundé, Rafinha. Following that, we spent the next summer not spending any money because again we kind of want to even the stake a little bit. The club felt like at that time investing in the squad was needed because that's probably the worst squad I've seen since supporting Barcelona. And they felt like at that time that squad was still good enough to continue on. So past that, we'd improve the squad with free agent deals if we felt like those were necessary. For example, like Inigo Martinez, who's doing very well now. Gundogan, who of course was our best player the one season that he did play at Barcelona. The two Joaos coming in on loan as well. Joan Laporte, of course, using his not only strong negotiating skills, but also a strong connection in the world of football to help us get those deals. And ever since then, we've been on the road to recovery. And now, actually, I think about an hour before we started this podcast recording, it was officially confirmed that we are now back in the 1-1 rule in the Liga for the first time in like 4 or 5 years. That basically means that for every money that you bring in as income, you could spend it. So we were under the 1-4 rule, which means that we could only spend a quarter of what we bring in. So, for example, if we sign, a $100 million GolzTV deal, we could only spend 25 million of that on the team. But now, since we're returning to the 1-1 rule, we can now spend 100% of that, invested back into the team. So that's kind of, the step one of recovery, which is now coming in closer to the end of his first tenure as the president during his second term. But we'll see how the club now operates with a bit more freedom. It feels like now the shackles have been lifted, but well, it's always going to be a difficult road. But having a president like Joan Laporta who knows the world of football, he's already the most successful president in our history, coming back to return to bring Barcelona from the depths of the depths to back to at least normality and competing at the top of European football is of course a massive accomplishment. So to answer your question, COVID was really the main issue. The club wasn't run correctly, and now the club is, and now we're on the verge of being fully recovered.
Yeah, and that's I mean, even as a Madridista, that's also obviously great news because, like I said, and just I'm sure just like myself, you're a big fan of La Liga and you value the league for what it is. Some people say it's the Premier League that's the best league. I always disagree, and I think it's La Liga. I might be a little bit biased. Actually, I am biased. I'm not ashamed to admit it. But the league doesn't, La Liga doesn't work unless Real Madrid and Barcelona are duking it out. And so, once it's like, Batman needs his Joker, if you will. Like that
Mhm.
relationship is important to La Liga as well. So yeah, seeing all the struggles that they were going through, it was rough. And even, you bring in Hansi Flick. I was skeptic as when he came in because I wasn't. I
You and
mean,
me both.
I think it was like, and my best friend's a Barcelona fan. Like, I mean, like like at this point I know the Barca way, and it's just like he's everything that would not make sense for a Barca coach. The fact that he doesn't have Barca ties, but I think with the youth that this roster has, his game plan does work towards it. I know that there's kind of been a dip recently, but I mean, you guys started really hot, and I'm sure that hotness is going to come back eventually. And I mean, it comes in bits and
Hopefully.
pieces. Yeah,
Hopefully.
for sure.
It was definitely a purple patch, I would say. I think I don't know if we peaked too early or teams were not used to how we played because Hansi Flick's been out of the game for about a year and a bit since he got sacked after the 2022 World Cup. But Hansi Flick was a manager that Laporta always wanted. When Laporta first came in 2021, when we had Koeman as our manager, the most leaked name that he wanted was Hansi Flick. I think he just signed with the German national team as the manager after leaving Bayern Munich. So it's so hard to get him. He was always a fan of the German school, which of course is high intensity, high press, high line, giga pressing kind of football. And he wasn't, of course, able to get that. Stuck with Coleman for a bit, and then Xavi came in mid-season and brought some of that a little bit, especially with that spark and having a legend coach you. And then, of course, did not work out in the end because Xavi believed the squad was still weak, whereas the president thought the squad was more than capable enough to compete on all fronts. So, a little disagreement there. I guess I would definitely say the treatment was a bit disrespectful towards Xavi. Probably one of the few things that I do disagree with what Laporta has done in the past few years, but Flick is coming. He's done well, but it's still the same story with Barcelona having a weak mentality, having dips in form, lacking so much in front of goal when you still have Rafinha Ballon d'Or season, Lamine Yamal rise, and Lewandowski back to his best, and we're still most chances created in La Liga and the most big chances missed in La Liga as well.
Yeah, which I mean, I feel like that comes with also having a young squad. Um, can
Yeah, the squad's
it's
not that young if you think about it. This squad has been the squad of Barcelona for about 4 years now. The likes of Gavi, Pedri, Araujo, they've all been, in the first team now for about 3 or 4 years. It's like me doing, let's say I was hired as, a Walmart manager. First year's gonna be rough for sure, getting used to it. Second year's gonna be better. Third year's gonna be better. Fourth year's gonna be, gonna be always improving. I'm still gonna be young, but at the end of the day, I've been doing the job for 4 or 5 years. The same with these players. I guess for me, I'm a frustrated fan who's been through. I guess from the outside looking in, you can definitely say it's a young team, but half this team, or not even half, I would say even 70% of this team has been part of the first team now for about 3 or 4 years. So I feel like the youth or the young excuse shouldn't be valid anymore. I know that Flick likes to use it a lot in his press conferences, but at the end of the day, when you perform so well at the first half of the season and the dip in form in the second half of the season, it's a huge, huge concern because the capabilities of the squad. The reason why Laporta sacked Xavi in the end is because he felt like the squad is good enough. The squad was showing that from August, September to October, but then fell off a cliff in November, December. Is it due to too many games, lack of intensity, weak mentality? Nobody knows, but it is a big, big concern.
Mhm. And so the second half of the season is going to be interesting. But obviously, right now, what's been dropped as soon as the year started was what's going on with Paul Victor and Dani Olmo as far as their registration. Which I feel like at this point for you, what else is new as a Barca fan? Because I mean, I think they also were before the season started, they were actually having troubles registering Hansi Flick as well. Um, but when that news came about with Dani Olmo, obviously comes in from RB Leipzig, 51 mil, to bring him into the club. Um, I would say very impactful signing because of just having that repertoire that he had with Lamine Yamal in the Euro. I think that was a huge addition to the team, especially when Gundogan's leaving, and now you have Dani Olmo to fit right into that role, a role that Hansi Flick does like. I mean, we've seen it with Mueller also in Bayern Munich. Um, and I can't really assess Dani Olmo too well this year because I know he's kind of been dealt with
Been
some
injured.
injuries.
Yeah, he's been injured twice for, I think once was a month, but the international break kind of made it look short. Another one was like a couple of weeks. So he's been fit for half the season, you could say.
So
And he started
I,
the season late because he went, of course, all the way in the Euros too.
yeah, as well. So obviously, as far as Paul Victor goes, being unable to register him, I feel like that's a big loss. I don't know too much about Paul Victor. Maybe you can bring up a little bit more information about Paul Victor. But how big is it if Barcelona is unable to register these two players?
I will say this: has never been a worried bone in my body that we're not going to register them. Joan Laporta, since coming in, has done every big decision he's had to make. He's done last second. He let Messi go an hour before their agreed deadline. He registered the likes of Memphis Depay, Eric Garcia, and Aguero the morning of our first La Liga match during that season, the 21-22 season, because he had to beg the likes of Piqué and Busquets to cut their salary in half to make space for them. When we did all those economic levers, we registered Jules Koundé last second. He actually had to give 10 million of his own money, him and the board, to register him. Even last season, we registered the two Joaos, very last second as well. So a lot of the big decisions that we've had, even signing the Nike deal, which you probably heard about, that was supposed to bring us back to the one rule. We kind of delayed it in the summer to do it now in like November, December. He's done everything last second because he believes that doing things last second, you get the best bang for your buck pretty much. So I've never been worried whatsoever about the situation because if you're consistent, you have a bit of a brain, you can analyze the situation, you know that in the end it's going to happen. The club released an official statement on December 31st saying that all the documents have been officially submitted to register the two players again, following us securing a new deal to sell our VIP boxes when the new stadium opens up. And now it's just all bureaucratic, politics back and forth at this point. Um, it is a bit of a shame that they were unregistered because it just makes Barcelona look bad. But at the end of the day, when you have, I'm not trying to take any digs at you, but when you have the whole entire federation of Spain, the RFEF, and also La Liga filled with nothing but Madridistas, it's going to make it more challenging for Barcelona. There's also reports, middle of December, that Atletico Madrid, Sevilla, and Athletic Club, which are probably the three most historic teams outside of Barcelona and Real Madrid in La Liga right now, they were pressuring La Liga to make sure that Barcelona would do everything correctly, not do any loopholes, and don't give them any favors. So everyone's preying on our downfall pretty much. So when you have the whole entire lens of Spain on you, it does make things a bit challenging. But not to give an excuse, of course, he shouldn't be doing these kind of things last second, but it's just kind of how he's been doing it. So that's why I've never really been bothered about it. I think the only real embarrassing part that will come about is if they're not registered in time for next week for the Spanish Super Cup. Missing the game, we do have a game, of course, tomorrow as of recording this video against Barbastro in the Cup. They both, Paulo Victor maybe would have played that game. Dani Olmo probably wouldn't have. It's a cup game, round 3-2 against fourth division side. I'm not too fussed about that, but if they're not registered to come Monday, it will look a bit of a shame. I think in the end they will be. It's just really down to when now. Will it be tomorrow, next week? Let's talk about even the deadline being now January 31st. I have no idea, but all the documents have been submitted. The money and proof of funds is all there now. It's just politics going back and forth at this point.